Hello and welcome. Merry Christmas to the Futro Hidden Movie Gems podcast. I'm your host, Tyke Spiker Christensen, and I hate people. We've got Jordan Christensen on the podcast.
And I don't care if they hate me.
We got Cameron Mickle on the pod.
That's what you are. Old potato, a glove of mustard.
A crumb of cheese. And first time ever appearing on the podcast is Byron Mickle.
If you were in my will, I'd disinherit you.
Guys, what movie are we talking about today? Today we're talking about Scrooge. It's a Christmas tale in song form. This movie came out in 1970. Its director was Ronald Neame. Neame? Neame? N-E-A-M-E.
Yeah,
Anyone's
that's
guess?
A weird name.
Neame. My name is Ronald Neame. Writers was Charles Dickens, by the way. You may have heard of him. And Leslie Bricusse did the screenplay. It stars Albert Finney and Alec Guinness. You may recognize him from...
It stars Albert Finney old and Albert Finney young.
Yeah, it's both young and old. And Casket, Albert Finney too. Dead Albert Finney. It's also got Alec Guinness. You remember him from Star Wars. I never cease to be amazed that the man of many faces, the million faces, I think. Yes, that's Snow Moon. He uses the Force in this movie, by the way. Just had to point that out before I forgot it, because he totally pulls the Force chair, pulls the chair over. All right, so today,
just to sit next to it.
Yeah, of course I can sit down. Yeah, this has to be one of the most quotable movies of all time, only because we've seen it more times than, one previously thought possible. So let's get into what was it like watching this movie for the first time and rewatching it for the podcast here. Let's start with you, Cam.
Can you remember the first?
Yeah, I don't know if I just remember like specifically one of the first times. I just remember like one of the only things I like vividly remember was Mom being like, skip at the scene where like he goes into like the scene with all the ghosts and the dead or like the underworld or whatever,
floating through the
sky. He's like flying in the sky. Yeah. And so watching for the first time, I was like, I didn't really understand like fully what was going on because I was probably really, really young. But rewatching it, it's obviously a classic in our household and definitely something that I'm impressed that I don't get bored of it every single time. But every single time it actually is like just as good. And like Ty said, always quotable.
So quotable. Jordan, how about you? What was like the first time you watched it and rewatching it for the podcast?
Yeah, I don't think I can remember either the first time. I just remember watching it almost every Christmas, if not every Christmas. Or at least, the Christmas
or in
season.
July.
Yeah. Yeah, Dad got excited about it. Yeah, and the music is so great, and I love Ty would always jokingly sing "Little Tiny Tim." Hopefully, we get a little bit of that.
That's right. I'll close out the podcast.
I was surprised that wasn't your opening quote.
Yeah,
I have to warm up my voice. I drank some tea, and my voice isn't up to.
If you can hit that, where I need to high notes.
If I can hit those high notes. What I'm interested in is Byron. When was the first time you saw this movie?
Do you even remember? Yeah.
And what is it like watching it today?
I do remember watching it
in the theater.
9 years old.
You dinosaur.
In the theaters. I know. 1970. I was 9 years old. My dad took us kids to go see it at the theater, and
oh my word!
Yeah, as a 9-year-old, there were a couple of scary scenes to it, obviously. But it made such a mark on me that yes, as my wife likes to say, force family fun. And this became kind of one of those things that we would do at some point every Christmas season, where we would watch, in the early days a VHS, and then later a DVD, and then Blu-ray. But now, of course, it's available on streaming, so it's available in multiple formats. But I still enjoy the show
far and wide.
Yes, I still enjoy the show for many reasons, not the least of which is I think Jordan mentioned it's a musical influence to really an age-old story that's been around for a couple hundred years. as Ty mentioned, written by Charles Dickens, but you don't normally see a musical version of the story of Christmas Carol. And I think the songs that were put forward for the show were they accented the show and really brought it to life in a way that a lot of things become more memorable when you attach music to them. And so, at least for me, that's one of the big reasons why I still enjoy it, even today at my age. I love watching it every year.
It's brilliant. And yeah, I like Cameron and Jordan. I have no idea. Inculcated at a very young age to this movie. It's just part of my childhood and upbringing. So watch it every year, and sometimes Dad would put it on in the middle of summer. But hey, it's a timeless tale. And even the Christmas element isn't lost on me though, because as you get older, Christmas time seems more and more, I don't know, the magic is slowly dwindling. And you got to keep it alive. And there's movies like this and It's a Wonderful Life humbug. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It just becomes more about how much money we're spending and less centered around the spirit of Christmas, So anyway, movies like this and It's a Wonderful Life that really strike at the heart of like, oh yeah, like what I loved about Scrooge is like it's so weird that he doesn't even seem to necessarily feel lonely because he had money, he had work. But if he just took 1 second outside of himself, watching his own past, watching his own present, what he's missing out on, and a glimpse into what the future could be, that it's really cool that he actually has a chance to change that. So that's remarkable to me. So I'm excited to talk about this movie. So let's get into two of our favorite things. Dad, let's hear from you. What are your two favorite things about this movie?
Well, that's hard for me. Having seen it, I don't even know how many times I've seen it. I've probably seen it
every year. What year is it? 2022. Then I have 2019 Thousand Brothers or whatever. Yeah, I've seen it that many times. Exactly.
I've probably seen it seriously probably 50 times plus in my life. So I definitely am quite familiar with it. And I would say I am still astounded that Albert Finney does both characters of the younger representation of Ebenezer Scrooge and, of course, the miser version of Ebenezer Scrooge. And what I guess, frankly, kind of still bugs me to this day is how he didn't win an Academy Award for that performance.
Was he at least nominated, hopefully?
No, he's been nominated 5 times, but not for this movie.
Yeah. The truth of it is I'm not sure, but it was just one of those remarkable performances. You can tell when actors are into the part, and so much so that it doesn't seem like acting at all. It just seems like it is who they are.
He should have got 2 Academy Awards, Dad, for each part.
Well, he did win. It says he got a Golden Globe. So I don't know if that Best Actor in a Motion Picture, Comedy, or Musical. So, but I don't know if the Golden Globe.
Normally that goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
If you win the Golden Globe, oftentimes you're kind of a shoe-in for the Oscar, but for whatever reason they didn't give it to him. So I'm just still to this day struck of how magnanimous his role is in the movie. He's such a central figure. He does a masterful job. I mean, even down to the details of things like, in the mid 1800s, you wrote with a quill pen and you would get ink, on your hands. Well, they had ink underneath his fingernails just to ensure that it was fully represented of the time in the movie. And so just little details like that about his character and his role. The second thing I would tell you that it really stands out to me is I absolutely love the Ghost of Christmas Present. The giant is just a tremendous, larger than life figure. Obviously, he's like twice the size of Scrooge in the show, and he's such a jolly, fun, loving, person that it's hard not to like him. And so,
like Hagrid on steroids.
And he's just this lovable guy that just it's easy to relate to. He kind of engulfs you in his in his little world. And I love how he just doesn't put up with Scrooge's, excuses and stuff. He just calls him out on it on several occasions. And so those are the two kind of top of head, but there's obviously many more, but those are the two that kind of stand out to me.
Yeah, these were just the two most recent favorite things, obviously, because every time we watch it, there's something new to point out, or
Yeah.
something.
For
So,
sure.
Cameron, how about you? Two of your favorite things?
I mean, I think for me, the first thing is just like the juxtaposition of the first time the "Thank You Very Much" song. Like that's like seeing that versus at the end the "Thank You Very Much," where the first time they're singing "Thank You Very Much" is because he's died and they're ripping up his checkbook, and he thinks that they're all like so happy and like remembering his death, and they're all just like so glad he's dead and all their debts are essentially free because of it. And then later on, they're all saying "Thank you very much" because he like gave like tons of people breaks, and then also just like was very just like in the Christmas spirit helping them out. And it's just so cool seeing that difference of how essentially people were like so happy to have him just off the face of the earth, whereas people were happy to have him like a part of his life or be a part of his life. And then
well, and it's fun too that they changed the song Father Christmas, all the words at the beginning, and then that same exact song, but like had a completely
He's the
different
nicest
meaning.
man.
Yeah.
He's the meanest man. Yeah. Rotten and everything. Yeah. It's great. It's got like
I
a
think
Grinch transformation.
I think that was amazing. I also really enjoyed like the kind of there's this situation in hell that he had or whatever, and how his Jacob Marley was like, oh, your chain, he's like, they've been working on it for weeks or whatever, and just kind of seeing how like a man who was so wealthy and then like in all terms of like the world very well off, but like so truly unhappy, and then also just like so like bad with God, and how he literally was only looking out for himself and didn't care about anybody else.
And just double checking, isn't he made his own chain, but then they had all the helpers come in to carry it, right? Because isn't that what Marley was saying? He said you made this chain and it's quite a chain.
It's all
like he earned it in his
choices.
life.
Okay. Yeah, all the choices.
Yeah.
It's the consequences of his actions.
I just remember hearing that too, Cameron. I thought they said, oh, I got extra devils to help make it. Or was he saying just carry it? Because I thought it was like he made that chain throughout his life.
Yeah,
well,
you forge your own chain through like, actions.
Yeah, and then they just brought it in.
If you remember at the very beginning when Marley first visits him, and Scrooge asks him, "What is that chain that you're wearing?" And he says, "It's the chain that I forged in life when all he cared about was money and the things of this world.
Mankind should be our business."
Yes, mankind should be our business.
Yeah, because he goes, "You were always a good business." What
happens? He says that was 7 years ago. Yeah. But
it was
he says, yours was
Christmas.
just as long 7 years ago. He says, the thing of how it's going to be now. And so, and of course, the representation to your point, Cameron, in hell was that 7 years of maybe choices that weren't the best that added to what was already the size and length of Marley's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have to say, I've seen a lot of different versions of the Christmas Carol. I'd say this is top 2. I can't think. I watched the other one with what's the actor's name from? It's from the what's the Stanley Kubrick film with the missile dropping? How he learned to love the nuclear bomb or whatever. What's that movie?
Interesting.
Yeah, it's that lead actor. It was a good telling. Yeah. What's his name? I can't. It's Dr. Strangelove. Jeez, I'm an idiot. But anyway, he plays Ebenezer Scrooge, and that was a good version. That was one I watched in the 7th grade. But I remember thinking, like, where's all the music? This movie is no
Peter
fun.
Sellers?
It was bleak. No, the other guy. It's got the raspy voice. He played General Patton in Platoon, or not Platoon, but whatever. Yeah, he played
George
General
C. Scott. George C. Scott.
Thank you, George C. Scott. And I kept thinking, like, I liked that version. I think it's well done, but like, I think the biggest thing. So my favorite thing about this movie is how long
the Jim Carrey one as well, right? Is that?
Oh yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, but it's not even worth mentioning here.
Okay.
It's awful. Robert Zemeckis, what happened? I mean, that creepy CGI, Jim Carrey. I don't know. It's just all over the place.
Muppet Christmas Carol's pretty good. I mean, it's a different kind of fun.
That is very endearing. Yeah, it's a different kind of fun.
But
that's why it's up there, top 3.
My favorite. Yeah.
and the biggest thing for me is seeing the transformation take place every time. Even in the other one with Scott or whatever, it's like 5 minutes he wakes up and has the realization he's going to be better. He talks to Bob Marley and he's like, you get a raise and we're going to help Tiny Tim. Merry Christmas to us all, and I'm going to go spend Christmas with my nephew. It ends there. With this one, he's got the whole fetching town like in throwing their hats in the air. He's forgiven everyone of their debts. He literally talks to the not the debt collectors, but the two guys that are collecting donations for the workout, the people that are unfortunate circumstances, the poor house, he goes to everyone that owed him money, the puppeteer, like everyone in the village owes this man some money. And you see the transformation, how he forgives all the debts and what a difference that makes in all their lives. And it's not even just necessarily about the money. He's now bought into the idea that he's going to use the rest of his life for good and spend time with people, make mankind his business, right? And this is one of the few Christmas carols that gets it right. Like, it's every single Count of Monte Cristo. After 3 hours of revenge at the very end, I didn't need to get revenge. That was bad of me to do. It's like, really?
I didn't need it.
Where did you learn that lesson? In the last 5 minutes, you were stabbing your mortal enemy, and now you're like, oh, I'm penitent and I'm sorry for what I did. But this is one of the few movies that really lays out Scrooge's transformation as a good person. And he changed. You get to see that change in song form and not in song form. Very, very sweet.
Well, I think that's an excellent point, because you're right. He goes from having these three experiences that were all very impactful on him, and then he has to catch himself because he thinks, oh, I just had a dream and it's nothing. And then all of a sudden it dawns on him, maybe it wasn't, maybe I have a chance to change. And then he just makes that, to your point, that switch where he just says, I'm not going to be the man that I was. I'm going to use whatever life I have left to make a difference in this world. And then he goes off and begins, the last 20 minutes of the show, and just transforms both himself and everyone that he comes in contact with. They're like almost like, who is this guy? We knew who you were before, and you become literally entirely different.
He has gone mad
in Santa's costume, right? He literally dons the costume and he goes around the town giving out
when he pulls down she's like, and who are you?
Oh, it's Father Christmas. It's Mr. Scrooge. He's gone mad. No, it's perfectly all right, my dear. Your wages will be doubled. He has gone mad.
Exactly.
Jordan, how about you? Two of your favorite things from this movie?
I think a lot of it was mentioned. Very quotable. Like, I'm pretty sure we quote it all the time, especially around the Christmas season. It's just really fun to hear Ty's impressions of the different characters and songs. So I love that because I could quote it to the end of the time. Like, as you guys were talking, I was just thinking of the lady that's like, "You woke my baby." I don't know. I'm excited to get to the quotes part because there's some really good ones. But then,
if you notice at that point, Jordan, remember when they
all spin around, yeah,
and then they all do this as they come back, around. Like,
I have to ask that too. Does it at all take you back to when you were living in England for 2 years, or like, I was just curious because this seems like, or maybe it's more of like a childhood thing because you saw it when you were young.
Yeah, I mean, when I was there in England,
it was as filthy as it was in the movie. Those poor beggar kids with bad teeth. He's like, yes, it takes him back.
Well, it was a little different, but obviously the representation of the period was different. But I just love that. I love English, the English speech and the way they talk. Obviously, this has a setting in central London, so they speak a very what we would call slang English, or over there they call it Cockney, and so it's very. If you listen to English people, particularly from London, talk fast, it's hard to understand them because they speak kind of slang. Yeah. Sorry, Jordan. I mean.
Oh, not at all. No, I asked that question. That was giving me time to think about my second favorite thing, which probably go in the songs. Because I'm a huge fan of what's the other musical? Charlie and the but Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And I mean, they had some English actors. I think the director might have been as well, but I love songs. I mean, they're very catchy and they're very fun, and you can get them stuck in your head and you can sing them
Yeah,
So-
especially the tunnel scene that gave me PTSD as a child.
From Willy Wonka.
And the rowers keep on rowing. Everybody that knows what they were talking
There's like
about.
centipedes and I'm like, what is going on?
There's a chicken's
I'm
head
like
getting
six,
chopped off. Yeah, it's freaking
I'm
the
6
centipedes
years old.
crawling over someone's
The
face.
songs are so good though. Like there's even moments when I was
If
listening
you want
to
to view paradise,
Yep.
take a look around.
well,
and
I was
you'll
talking
see.
about in this movie as well.
Oh,
but
in
just-
this movie.
Yeah. But the songs are like
Wrong movie.
there,
Wrong movie.
there's moments I would just feel I'd get chills because I'm like, oh, this is such a good I loved when they'd almost kind of mix in songs together. Like I don't know, it kind of seems almost seamless.
The bell part is super cool though.
Yes.
That is really cool.
That part is really sick.
It's nice.
Or
But you
they
know what's
brought it.
interesting
Oh,
though?
yeah.
Oh, sorry, real quick, Jordan.
Yeah.
What's really interesting is given that this movie was made in 1970, that was kind of the end of an era of big production movies that were very much musicals that really kind of started in the mid to late 50s and carried through the 60s. And so that was a very common theme to mix in musical, half a dozen or 10 songs in the course of a 2-hour movie. And so it was kind of very representative of the period of time that the movie was made. But to your point, I agree that there are some really, really catchy songs that are in the song that are in the movie that accentuate the story that's being told. And like you say, it's easy to get them stuck in your head.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and it's funny too. I was watching like this YouTuber that talks all about the music and films, and one of them he talks about the character's want song. Every character, the protagonist of every movie has the beginning of like their character motivations and what they want. And Scrooge is so deliciously funny. I mean, it's I hate people, and it's actually like
Yes.
like what I don't
Mhm.
want song is hanging out with people begging me for money. He looks at people that spend money as foolish. It's so great.
Right.
And
People are despicable creatures.
you get the sense that he would be like just in denial about everything because he's so unbelievably calloused to his nephew who just wants to spend Christmas with him. Like you're like, he's probably done something wrong. All he did was get married and he like judges him for it. And I guess he hates his nephew now because his nephew's a happy married man. Like it's bonkers, but like that's the kind of character that Scrooge is. And you get the sense that he hates people and he does not care that they hate him back. It's great. So you learn so much about his character. And at the end, it's so great to see the transformation because he's not a static character. He's a dynamic character and he changes. You see the change. And that's what's so important about this movie. Like it's always lost on me every time. He's like, I'm going to go give more to charitably. And even in the Charles Dickens book, no knock on Charles Dickens, because I know you can leave the rest up to your imagination. Like he's now transformed. But sometimes it's like, give the audience a little 20-minute finale. That's fine with me. It's great. I mean, and I would even argue that one of my favorite scenes, just this little nugget of intimacy with Scrooge when he's walking away from the town square, no one's around and he's genuinely happy. He does a heel click. He's like old, right? You're like, he's gonna hurt himself, but he's just genuinely transformed and he talks to his the door knocker or whatever. Where Jacob Marley appeared earlier the night before was the very first visitation of a ghost figure. And he's just like, I don't know if I imagined the whole thing or whatever, but I'm now a changed man and I'm better for it. He leaves the Santa Claus outfit with him. And he's like, I am now going to spend Christmas with my family. And then, movie ends. And it's just so sweet because you see him all alone. It wasn't even for show. It wasn't like, oh, look how generous I'm being with my money, which I always felt was part of it. Every time I read the Charles Dickens book, it's like, my employee is now going to get double his wages and we're going to help his son get better, which is like an obvious nice bonus. But then the movie and I'll donate money to the poorhouses or whatever, to the poor. And it's just like, that's it. And this one, you just see him all alone and he's happy, like he's laughing to himself, he's like experiencing joy for the first time.
Well, there's so much emotion to it too. Like the powerful messages throughout. Like I cried 3 times watching it this time. I'm like, dang, like this is
Jordan, what are the parts you cry at, dude? You gotta
well, just
you gotta elaborate.
The one that I remember crying specifically was when he said, spirit, take me from here, I can bear it no more. That just gets me when he's
for sure, dude. No, to me it's after he lets her leave and he's like, why did I let her go? He's like, I'm not really sure of it. And then you watch it, you're like, you're an idiot, let her walk away. It's great. It's hard, it's gut-wrenching.
And then he's like, fool, getting all upset over nothing.
That's true. He still thinks he imagined it after the first one.
Oh, I know. Oh, yeah.
I love it. He checks his coins like every time he wakes up. He's like, stuffs it back in there. I'm like,
Yeah,
no one robbed you while you were
Money
sleeping.
stitch.
How many people sleep with a bag of gold coins around in a bag
Gosh.
around your neck? You know what I mean?
And
I
if
can
you
see that
watch
asphyxiating
every
him.
time you
Yeah, if
wake
he's not
up.
careful, his money will kill him.
And if you watch the very early scene there in his counting house, his place of business, when he counts money,
Oh yeah.
like so when he goes to pay, Bob Cratchit, he counts it when he takes it out of his safe. He counts it into his own hand a second time, and then he counts it a third time when he gives it to Cratchit. You're like, who does that? Who counts money
He's an
3
accountant's
times to
best
make sure?
friend.
That's
I
right,
mean,
dude.
you're like, wow.
Triple check. Yeah, that's
For
right.
15 shillings.
15 shillings. Folks, we can't do it any longer. We're getting straight into quotes. And if you think of other things from the film, let us know. But we're just going to start quoting unabashedly.
My only nitpick is that jump scare of the Ghost of Christmas Future. As a kid, I was always so scared of that scene.
He looks at his own tombstone, his grave, and he's like, what's going to happen? And then he turns around, the organ music just blares.
The guy's a skeleton, That is again, when I was 9, that kind of freaked me out.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. It's surprising because I don't even remember. I will say the other Charles Dickens do lean into. So that Christmas song that says, "We'll tell the glories of scary ghost stories of Christmases long, long ago." The ghost stories were this. Like Charles Dickens novel is really upsetting. The very first line is like, Jacob Marley was dead to begin with, dead as a doornail, or whatever. Like it's very bleak and almost sad, but it really reflects the time Charles Dickens was living in. Such was it the Great Depression? Or he lived through a really tough time economically.
No, it was the 1860s. So the late 1850s,
early depression. Yeah, not the 30s depression, but like they were in a difficult time, right? Because he saw impoverished people everywhere, and he was a struggling writer.
Kids had to work in workhouses, right? I mean, in order for families to make ends meet, kids had to go to work, and oftentimes in workhouses.
Horrible.
Awful. And some people would rather die than go there.
They'd rather die than they better do it.
Decrease the surplus population.
And I loved when the giant used that same quote on him to make him think about what he had said earlier. Because then he started
words.
Yeah. And he started to actually care for people, and then he used it in "Don't mock me, spirit."
What's really funny too, there's a scene that I almost
say that all the time.
Don't mock me, spirit. What I like is there's the scene where he sees himself as a schoolboy all alone, not caroling with the other kids. It's so awful. He has no one to go home to at Christmas time. He's just like locked in that boarding school or whatever. And he sees him. He's like, "Oh, it's just," and the Christmas past is like, "What is it?" He's like, "No, it's nothing. There was a carol outside my house the other day, and maybe I should have given him something." It's like, if you saw what he did, he like threatened to hit him. It wasn't that he didn't give him charity. It was like he threatened to like.
Yeah, he took his fire poker, or that was a shovel. That's what it was. It was the shovel.
Waves it around,
raked it across his.
I just love how he like thinks of it like, oh, maybe I should have given him something. It's like, you threatened him. Like, anyway, I just love that. And they all mock him, calling him Father Christmas, which again was a joke in the beginning, and becomes at the end he embodies the spirit of Christmas, literally donning Santa's outfit. It's so great.
Well, his transformation is amazing. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the whole scene, the "Able to Begin Again" song or whatever, when he like starts thinking about, it's just after his vision of being in the afterlife, wearing the great chain, I guess remaining the rest of his life alone in hell. And he's the only one in hell who's chilly, which is one of my favorite things, because he doesn't, ironically, they don't turn up the heat in his cleric office because he's going to be Satan or Lucifer's cleric or whatever. I love that. The irony of that.
Personal clerk.
Personal clerk. Yeah. And that's great. And he's like, you'll be the
only
one
in
hell who's chilly. I love that. It's great. So, but other quotes, if you guys think of them, you just throw them out here. There's so many.
I mean, I just love the December the 25th song.
Mr. Fezziwig.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Oh yeah.
And then he makes the comment too.
Yeah, or even you mentioned all the cheap
Ghost of Christmas Past. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, all the times that we watch the movie over and over, we find new ways in which Scrooge was so cheap. He would like lick his fingers and stop the wax from burning on the candles to make sure they last longer. Like just like every little thing he could penny pinch, to try to save money.
I love when they're moving his gravestone. What do you call it? Not gravestone, but his coffin. And then they just drop it onto the
on the hearse,
onto the wagon. On the wagon. Yeah,
so great.
That's true.
And then they're dancing on top of it too,
and dancing on top of it. Literally dancing on his grave, which is pretty
right, because he had no posterity, right, that could take over his debts that he was owed. I'm trying to remember my thought now.
You were just talking.
There's never enough time to say all that we would wish, Dad. But what's important is to take as much time as you have.
That's Dad's quote time.
Oh, excuse me, sir.
You're taking the end of mine. That's how I'm going to finish.
We're dancing on the grave.
Dancing on the grave.
Coffin.
The coffin.
On the coffin.
And then thank you very much. And
well, what's impressive about that is he's clueless to the fact that they're celebrating his death.
Yes.
He thinks that they're all just enamored with him, right?
The way they staged it, right? Because he didn't see what they were carrying out. He also didn't know he was ripping up his checkbook behind him. He thought they were all aroused by his speech that he was giving. He's like,
well, that was his debt ledger. So everyone that owed him money, he'd written it down in his book, right? And so he'd go and he was such a, I mean, honestly, I had the thought this time seeing it where that was, you could almost make the case that was the first definition or real life example of a loan shark. He would loan people money at exorbitant interest rates. And if they didn't pay, he would add a hefty additional amount to it. Just like those two ladies who would sell stuff that they knitted and whatever.
Plus the perks of food, clothing. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And he would ask for stuff for free. And then he would totally, overwhelm them with an additional amount. They're like, that's almost as much as we make in a week. And he's like, well, I could confiscate everything in your stall if you want me to,
Those two sweet old ladies.
I know.
they sell like clothes to children.
Yeah.
It reminds me so much of that scene in Elf. It reminds me so much of that scene in Elf where James Caan's character is he's like, we're gonna have to repossess the books or whatever because you faulted on your loan or whatever. And she's like, it's like a nun, but the children love the books. He's like, I love to hear that out of a focus group.
Doesn't Scrooge Ty kind of remind you of what's that movie you love with the oil? What's it called again? There Will Be Blood.
Are you talking about There Will Be Blood?
Yeah, well, because like even at the end, like I mean, in this movie, you see his house; it's like empty. There's just like nothing in it. It's
big empty hallway,
and dusty,
right?
and cobwebs.
I totally get what you're saying, Jordan, for sure.
In fact,
Scrooge is the sequel to There Will Be Blood, and he has this amazing transformation. It's incredible. There Will Be Christmas Spirit, I think, is what it was initially called, but they named it Scrooge. It's a movie about a man that goes mad with power and money, and he ruins.
But when he finally gets everything, it's like his house is big and it's just as empty as he is inside. So I just think I think it's a fun representation. His house is a great representation of
it. Would have been Scrooge's life had he not had this intervention with the three ghosts and the vivid dream that he did. And it's great because you know what's so crazy about this too? Back when this was written, Charles Dickens, this was like a novel idea of having three spirits representing past, present, and future. Like, remember when you guys watch It's a Wonderful Life? They literally explain the plot like 8 times because they're like, this is a novel idea. Like, we all get it. We're like, oh, imagine existing or imagine life if you hadn't been born. But like, even George Bailey, played by Jimmy Stewart, is like, wait, what's going on? I don't understand. Well, what's happening here? Oh, what's happening? Why does my wife recognize? It's like, because you weren't born. And they keep reminding him because he doesn't get it. That plot concept was really heavy. Imagine Charles Dickens swinging for the fences. He's like, we have 3 spirits and they represent a time period in your life, and they're going to take you as a third-party viewer to that time in your life. It's crazy. And that's why it's so timeless. And you see TV shows nowadays like doing the Christmas Carol. They have TV shows where they do a mock episode, like a Christmas related episode, where a character gets like a moment like this, where they visited by their past or present. They did Scrooge with Bill Murray. They keep telling this story over and over again, and they do it for modern audiences. It's just so timeless, and it's amazing how novel it was at the time. Like something we take for granted for sure, because we're like, oh, we know the thing. We know Christmas Carol.
What's interesting about it, there's a another movie that was put out a number of years ago, and we have it. I know you guys have seen it. It's called The Ghosts of Dickens Past,
Yes, the
and
story
it,
of
it
yes.
literally tells the backstory of how he came up with this idea of Ebenezer Scrooge and Jacob Marley and all that. And he had this basically writer's, what do they call it, writer's stupor, where he couldn't come up
Writer's
with
block.
anything. Writer's
Writer's
block.
block.
And he couldn't come up with anything because, when you're a writer back in that day, if you didn't write, you couldn't sell books, and you
You
couldn't
sent your
earn for your
kid to the
family.
workhouses.
Yeah. And so remember, he has that experience with that kind of that literally that probably 13 or 14-year-old girl who kind of guides him through on several nights different experiences, and he's able to see. And so from that, he got the inspiration to then write the story. And if you recall, as he goes to write it, he literally, even eating and sleeping was a burden. He just wanted to write this story about the Christmas Carol, and then to really accentuate what because he really understood that it wasn't from him. He was inspired to write this. If you recall, he offered the book at a very, very cheap price because he wanted the story to endure and live on into, well into the future. And obviously, it has. Here we are talking about it, 170 years later.
Man, to think I could do something that would be as permanent as that is remarkable. That's just so remarkable.
It's called this podcast, Ty. Come on.
That's right. People will be studying this years from now. So let's get more quotes. Throw them out as you think of them. I just think this movie is so quotable. The songs, it's hard to think of the quotes without the songs. Like, they say happiness. Like, every time Albert Finney is watching his girl sing, he has no reaction to it, but you kind of get the sense that he's getting there to, like, he knew the motions. Like, I'm going to talk to this girl. He didn't want to dance with her. He's not the sociable type. He's a hard worker. And then shortly after, you have this montage of them obviously falling in love, and it seems really sweet, but you find out, like, she was like everything, and he was just very much reserved, held back. He wanted to get a good position, get a good career going, and it blows my mind. He tells his fiance, like, I find it impossible to discuss personal matters during business hours. Good day, or whatever. And you're like, yo, you just lost her. Like, nice work. Like, it's crazy.
Well,
His fiance that, and she's leaving him.
If you recall, the statement that she made right before that happened was, "Be happy in the life that you have chosen," because she had waited for him for many years to, marry, and he was, of course, trying to acquire wealth so that he felt like he could be in a position to properly provide for her, given that her father was obviously his employer. But all of that said, she says, "Be happy in the life you chose," which is like, yeah, you chose this life. And because you chose money over her, that's why she was like, you love her more than you love me.
Oh, I love that. That's the part that gets me in the feels every time, dude. Something about, like, seeing your life or watching the love of your life leave because you prioritized work or something else, right? Like, it's an awful thing. It's awful.
I love the minister's cat scene when he's like, the minister's cat is a monogamous cat, and then I love it when he messes up. He's like, you idiot, you stupid. Like,
I'm amazed at people's vocabulary.
The
the game is literally just adjectives, and they have to say an adjective with the letter of the alphabet. And I'm like, we couldn't play this game. We're all too stupid nowadays to play games like that.
And
it's awful.
There's two things, Cameron, I love about that. Is one is all the actors did so well at pretending like he wasn't in the room with them. Like when
he's yelling at their ear. Yes.
Yeah. When he's like yelling at them and like them, not breaking character. And then another thing I love, and especially at this time, like they had him in the same exact room, and he looks over and he's like, "You fool." And like, he's standing right there in the window
in the same shot. Yeah. So they stripped the film or whatever and put overlay.
Back in the day, it was a lot more difficult. Yeah. They
crazy,
had to actually cut the film. And so
you have two same of the actor in the one shot.
But in so many other movies, even today, they make movies like that. And I so many times I can tell, like, they're clearly looking off too far and they're not looking at the person. But this one, I was just like impressed, even though how old it was. Like, he's still, like, it's believable that he's not. Like
well, it's to that point, Jordan. remember the very first scene where he comes to his house after having gone
Yes,
through and made a scene,
Marley
and
appearing.
that very first. I mean, this is 1970, and to superimpose Marley's white face over the door knocker that was previously a lion's head was pretty impressive. To be
Mm.
that far out and to have it look actually legit. It wasn't like, oh, that looks fake. You know.
It's humbug, Steve.
And then
I will not
and then
believe
he,
it.
he looks and then he looks on both sides of the door like certainly someone's back there.
I know someone's pulling my leg, right?
It's a magician's worst
Exactly.
nightmare.
Yeah, there's some
Well, I love the
haunting
part
ghosts.
where he's in his little, like, I guess we would call it living room, to eat his soup or whatever. And then when Marley he hears the change, coming down the hallway, and he goes over and he locks the doors, and then he hears them, and the key turns, and the door lock comes up. He's like, and he's looking at it like, what just happened? And then the door
Oh,
opens, and he has that little poker. You're like, what do you
on
want with
guard.
me?
Yeah, even his physicality is so great. Like he's all hunched over, his grubby little hands, the balding spot on his head. It's I see the makeup. I mean, you see Albert Finney. He's like the age when he was younger, right? Like that's his current age. What was he
Yes.
when he made this film? 40? In his 30s, maybe?
Had to be. Yeah, probably
Yeah.
had to be in his 40s, I would guess.
And he plays
But
this old miserly 70-year-old. And I'm like, the makeup then is more convincing than half the stuff they have now. The stringy hair, the fingernails, everything. Like you said, it's the attention to detail. It's really, really impressive. It's
do you
crazy.
remember when the bells were ringing at the first scene where
Yeah, he was 34 when
used to
he
be?
was doing this.
Oh, was it 34? Oh, okay. Wow.
He was 34.
That's
So
impressive.
young. So young. He's playing
Yeah.
a miserly old man. And it's so good.
Where he's walking with that candlestick holder, and he puts, what you would do if you were walking quickly, you'd put your hand in front of the candle so the flame wouldn't go out. And so he's all hunched over, running to see where those bells are. Why are the bells ringing? Walking in there.
Well, and it's the perfect example of like seeing is not believing. I just love that, like, even
Yeah.
after all that, he's like
Yes.
sitting drinking his soup, and he's like, he does that, like,
He growls or something.
That is true. He does.
Scoffs.
That is true.
Well, he even blames indigestion for the reason. Like he's like, I have a
Yes.
stomach problem. That's probably why I'm seeing things like the ghost of my dead business partner in my living
What
room.
did you eat to see that?
Yeah, no
and I
kidding.
love that it's the old potato that totally makes Marley snap. He's just
Yeah, that's what you are. You
You're
ain't
a
got potato. That's true. That is one of the
You're not a
better lines of the
potato.
show.
You're no potato.
Why did you persecute me?
She's
I-
great.
I love it when Bob Cratchit like says thank you, and he's like saying stuff, and every time Scrooge turns to him, and he's like, he like threatens him constantly, and then
Yeah.
he's
Another
so
word from you, Bob Cratchit, and you'll be spending your Merry
Christmas
Christmas,
by losing your
unemployed.
position.
Losing your position.
I know. And then, yeah, when he leaves and he's like, Merry Christmas, he's like, take your infernal Christmas with you. Like, just
Have you gotten from here?
Always.
so good.
Good afternoon. Oh, and Uncle, Happy New Year. Good afternoon.
It's 7:00. He's saying good afternoon. And I love the part at the very beginning of the counting house where it turns 7 and the clock is chiming, and Bob Cratchit comes over to
It's
Scrooge.
7
He
o'clock,
goes,
sir. Yeah.
Sir, it's 7:00. And he waits till the last chime. He goes,
Correct.
now, like,
Correct.
oh, now it's 7.
Now it's
Okay.
7. Yeah. How dare you take off time
Correct,
from work?
Cratchit.
Yeah.
Well, and
You're punching out early.
I love how deluded he is. He's like, he believes that he is like, when he's singing the song, he's like, kind-hearted me.
Yes.
Hard-working me. It's just like,
thrifty and kind as
He's
can be.
deluded.
I was rather hoping I would make it into heaven.
What
That's
did he
right.
say?
When he's in hell, yeah.
Didn't you really? Or
I'd
something
rather-
like that.
Yeah. I kind of was hoping I'd make it to the other place. Yeah.
But didn't you really? Yes, of course.
Oh my gosh, that's unreal. Yeah, there's so many. I'm amazed at the denial, but like you get the feeling that he believes this.
That's a great point, Jordan.
Yeah.
And
That's a great point.
oh yeah, Dad, you didn't say the quote you always say, which is, "I want another one of them drinks."
How about another one of them drinks?
Later.
What is this? I've never had it before. What is it? It's taste.
It's the milk of human kindness.
Milk.
Never had it before. Of course you haven't.
Of course you haven't. You're a miserable little creature. I love his names that he gives him. He's so mean to him.
Well,
He's so
and when
mean.
he says, if you were in my will, nephew, I'd disinherit you. And then in the background, the giant says, Scrooge, get over here. Time for another one of them drinks.
I love it. And then he completely comes overcome with joy. I don't know. He seems inebriated with happiness. He's like, ooh. He's overjoyed. It's so great. I love it.
Well, what to me the contrast of that is he's through a series of choices over many years has kind of descended to this place of being really a miserable old miser, as he's referred to. And yet when he's shown reflections of his past life, there's a lot of happiness there, but he had so forgotten all of that because of those choices that he made over time that just removed all that from his memory.
It is interesting because that you say that, because it is sad where he's like, oh, I forgot. Like when he sees himself as an orphan, how hard it was. He's like, oh, I should have given something to the kid that was caroling outside my house. He sees Fizzywig. He's like, we had so many fun at those parties, and you see him. He's just sitting there clapping along, tapping his foot. But that was still more enjoyable than work, and watching everyone else dance around. It's certainly more enjoyable than, and Fizzywig looked like such a great employer. He's just happy as can be. And I love it too. This ghost, every single ghost uses his own words, and then when he hears them back to him, he's always like, hey. So one of the great scenes is when she goes, why, he merely spent some of his money and he paid you hardly he goes, money had nothing to do with it. He's insulting Ghost of Christmas
Past. Has the ability to make our work a pleasure or a burden.
Yes and he's literally saying it had nothing to do with money.
Fizzywig
was a great person.
That he was doing to Bob Cratchit.
Exactly. Making work an absolute chore, which is great. And it reflected in the second one where the Ghost of Christmas Present is constantly saying his words, where he literally says, if they'd better die, because he asks about Tiny Tim, and it's more personal this time because he knows Bob Cratchit, he knows his kid, and he just watched their family life in this intimate Christmas Eve toast, where Bob Cratchit is amazingly charitable and wants to toast his employer when he knows he's being shorthanded and or stiff-handed with the wages and everything like that. But especially when his family's struggling so much. And he even says if Tiny Tim is going to die, you better do it and decrease the surplus population. And it's ooh, it's hard hitting, and it's really hits Scrooge in the feels. And that's again, this is all being regurgitated back to him, his own words, and it really hurts, obviously, because it's he's seeing it in a new light now, and it's crazy because you almost give him a pass for what he's saying, or I don't know, how do I say this? It definitely doesn't sting as hard when he hears it and it's personal and said back to him, how shocked he is at these how could you be so callous, Christmas present, to say such a thing? It's dude, this is your philosophy, man. I'm just saying what you believe in. They better die, they better do it, decrease the surplus population. That is a harsh thing to say. So, but and of course Christmas Futro doesn't say anything back to him, but does point to his tombstone. Which is great. I thought that was a fun choice. Sure. Christmas Futro doesn't say a word. It's all hand points and gestures. He's showing him everything, and it's a very menacing, very Grim Reaper foreshadowing.
I think kids should be watching this, just because I mean I know that besides the scary scenes, but but it personally, I just was thinking how grateful I am, those kids that couldn't even get any toys or anything, the girl that wants I want the dolly in the corner or whatever, and when he finally got that, what is
I
that?
want the oranges.
Yeah. And then the big, he got that carousel or whatever it's called, and it's it's so big it can't even fit in their little tiny home. It's just
I know, wherever they store that thing, they could probably sell it and feed their family for a few days. You didn't steal it, did you? Because Tiny Tim couldn't imagine that being purchased. You know, he's
But-
like, who has the money to buy
But
something like this?
I mean, you watch, like Harry Potter, and he's like 36. I got the, and I just think of that little bratty kid and kids today,
Yes.
and I just
Oh, yeah.
watch this.
Yeah,
and it's-
watch this movie. I forced my kids to watch what was the other? Oh, I reread The Christmas Orange. It's about like these kids who's like, don't even put up the Christmas tree until after the kids go to sleep because they come unruly on Christmas Eve night, and then someone gets punished for looking at the Christmas tree like after hours. It's like, so you get no Christmas orange. It's like that's their only present is an orange for Christmas. And I tell my kids that, and they're like, what? Like they had an existence where they'd only get an orange for their gifts. I'm like, yeah, that was it. Like, I know you guys like eating, clementines or tangerines or cuties when I give them to you, but to think like that's all you'd be getting for Christmas. And then one year that she's going to try it for the first time, it's taken away from her. So you kids have it easy. Let's put it that way.
Was it the same in Chile, Ty, as it was in Argentina when they'd say time for dessert and they'd bring out an apple and you're like, what?
Yeah, they did that all the time at my mission, Jordan.
Oh yeah, it would be like a like a Dole
Watermelon,
fruit cup. Yeah, a Dole fruit cup, and you're like, oh, yummy. Yeah, like some peaches or something. Some peaches in a little fruit cup. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Are you ready to give the big quote, Dad? Or are we saving it?
Yeah, Dad.
Do we get all the other ones?
Ready to hear it.
Well, you ready to hear so to me,
hit us with it.
There was one scene, we've kind of talked around it a little bit tonight, but the Ghost of Christmas Present, the big giant, where when he brings Scrooge back home, he says, yes, Scrooge, I brought you home, and he's like, and Scrooge is like, well, wait a minute, there's so much more for us to talk about. Why do you need to go, And then the giant says something to the effect of, my time on this planet is very brief. There is never enough time to do or say all the things that we would wish. The thing to do is to try as much as you can in the time that you have. Try to do as much as you can in the time that you have. Remember, Scrooge, time is short, and suddenly you're not there anymore. That to me is probably my favorite quote of the show, because it's so impactful. There's so much there. It's so true. Our time here on this earth is so brief. Oftentimes we get caught up in thinking, life is long. It can be challenging and whatever, but man, in the grand scheme of things, life is so brief, and the time, really the challenge is to try to do as much as you can in the time that you have, because you really don't know, are you going to leave this earth early, so to speak, not have a full life because of being called to, to the next life. You never know. And so you try to do as much as you can with it. So I love that quote. Love it.
That's brilliant.
Yes, so the trick is to watch as many movies as possible because life is short.
That's right. That's right. That's the lesson I heard from it. Exactly.
That's
right. I heard that as well.
Cameron, this movie just took so much out of you, right?
Yeah, I got bloody nose.
No, he was crying, everybody. He was crying while talking about the movie Scrooge. It's okay. He's overcome with the Christmas spirit.
Freaking out.
I was crazy.
Yeah. This movie and It's a Wonderful Life destroy me every year. So I watch it, and to me, it's actually, watching him miss out on his life, but also the moment where he changes, the Able to Begin song, where he's like overcome with joy, and you just see the light of Christ coming through him. It's so joyous. The Christmas spirit is alive and well, and he is dusting off the banisters, sliding down the rail. He's throwing his scripts the scrolls around in his house, his ledgers everywhere. Right. He's throwing them, scattering them about, because none of that stuff matters. And it's almost awful that he's the age that he is, that discovering this, because when you see, now I have a few theories about this, because everyone's not much older. Like, thank you very much, guy. The soup guy, he's pretty much the same age when Scrooge is dead. So it might be a few more years that he's got. But my thought is, and I've seen this in I work with seniors. I've seen that the ones that are surrounded by family and people that love them and they're charitable, I do see them live longer and happier, longer lives. And then maybe it's anecdotal, but the ones that are miserable keep to themselves. They have nothing to do. They don't keep themselves occupied. They're lonely. I think they tragically, it shortens their lifespan for sure. And there's a big aspect to that. So I like to think that when Scrooge made this life, he added another 10, 15 years on his life. And but hopefully he wasn't around that much longer, because if he forgave everyone's debts so quickly, he might find an issue with cash flow and have to ask for some money at the end of his life, which I'm hoping everyone will be willing to share with him. But who knows, right? Don't need to think about what the implications or the
Maybe
Maybe
he
it'll be
sells
like
his
one
big
of a
house.
lifetime.
Scrooge
was
2
that,
movie,
Kevin?
right? Yeah. Scrooge takes out a loan to just float by, his retirement or whatever, pay off his mortgage.
Well, you know what was it? What's interesting is after he has these three experiences in the middle of the night, he comes outside and he sees the little boy going by with a sled, and he asks the boy, what day is it? And the little boy says, today? He goes, yes. What is it today? He goes, well, Christmas Day, of course. And then he's so
It was
relieved.
more high pitched. Christmas Day, of course.
I think I'm going to love little children.
Today, it's Christmas Day, of course. You mean the one who's biggest day? Can't get my voice up there. I'm warming myself up to a
You're
Tiny
warming
Tim
up
song.
for Tiny Tim.
That's right.
But he's so relieved that he didn't miss his opportunity to change, right? That relief that it happened. They did it all in the one night, so he could have the experience. And then now he has this chance to apply this change that he so desperately wanted to do.
That's brilliant. Folks, any other quotes you guys want to throw out there? Anything from this movie?
I think it's most of them. If you want to just do your little Tiny Tim impression, then we can get to what we're watching.
One of my favorite quotes, I don't know how to quote it, but when he's going out the window with Jacob Marlin, he's just like, Marley. It makes me laugh every time. It's so underrated, but it's just a forgettable scene. And then obviously smashing through the window with the giant. Like when he's like,
Yes.
I like life, outstretches his arms and he
much
flies
we-
down at him. Scrooge starts laughing, throws the goblet of milk of human kindness, and they go smashing through the window and he's laughing. It's probably the funniest. And you just see him floating in the sky, like back and forth through the sky at night.
And then when he lands on top of him and he's like, what am I doing in the middle of the night in a pile of snow?
Over there, Scrooge.
Yeah, he's like, go up to the window and see what they're doing. Will they be able to see me? No, I'm sure that'll be good news for them. And it's like, will it cost you anything? No, which I'm sure will be good news for you or whatever. Yeah. Anyway, I said it backwards.
He said it backwards, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Jordan. Did I say
Wait,
backwards?
no, but I love when Scrooge was like, yeah, that's right. You come here. When
come listen to this. Yes.
Yeah.
You giant. Listen. Bob Cratchit's speaking good about me. Yeah. There's someone that'll spit vouch for me, right? Yeah. Anyway.
If he was here now, I'd give him a piece of my mind. His wife, Bob Cratchit's
the only
wife,
person, the smartest person in the movie,
Yeah.
Putting their kids to work. I gotta say, man, what a life, going around leaving your kids to sing on a street corner so you could have some money for Christmas. Yo, that's a sad time. It's bleak.
Well, honestly, it's a reflection of another time, right?
Yeah.
Another time when things were quite a bit harder for a lot of people, not just some, but a lot.
Absolutely. Well, folks, any other quotes you guys want to throw out?
Ready to hear that Tiny Tim voice type.
Tiny Tim.
You gotta set the setting.
Do it. What was that, Dad?
Gotta give the setting.
You gotta set the scene.
Gotta set the scene. Yeah. So Tiny Tim gets home and they're like, it's the one and only Carol singing Cratchits. And they get home and he's like, oh, look how much money you made us. And they're like, all right, now we're gonna have some punch. We toasted the Christmas spirit, and now we're gonna have a song from Tiny Tim. Tiny Tim gets up on the table and he's holding his crutch. I mean, gosh, it's a scene that makes you want to wet your, like it wets your eyes. Let's put it, just not wet yourself. And
we lost there for a sec.
Yeah, it makes you. It's a tearjerker, I guess, is what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Tiny Tim gets up there and he's on the table. He's I can't even remember the rest of the song, but I just remember on the beautiful day that I dream. Thank you, everybody, and everyone applauds Tiny Tim. You can applaud me. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, everyone on the podcast. Man, that was hard. I'm getting older, and like I said, I actually am coming down with something because my kids are petri dishes, so I'm sick. So anyway, I did my best. I gave it my all. But if you want to see a good version, we made a Christmas
we
Christensen Carol, and I did it all
Sure.
out there. I did the perfect pitch and everything, just home fresh off the mission. So because this movie played such an important part in our life, of course we had to parody it, and we tried to do the best we could. So ow, I
That's
hit my
pretty
finger.
good, actually.
Thank you. And then obviously the other part that makes me want to cry in this movie is literally hearing that song, because I laugh at the first part, and then it's a total tearjerker when you literally see Bob Cratchit at the graveyard. He's like literally there at the
And
cemetery
hearing that
mourning
song.
his son in like this very shallow, modest grave, and he literally is crying, and he's like, I'm here every Christmas to with you, Tim, because I don't want you to be alone on Christmas. Gosh, no father should see the passing of their son. It is hard, and that is one of the scenes that gets me, because you hear the song in the background and the dad just says, oh, Tim, and he starts like he's about to cry too much, so he gets up and leaves, and that's too much for me to handle that every time. Bob Cratchit, man, what was his name? That actor just knocked it out of the park. Let's see if I can find him. Where is he? Mr.
He did a
Fezzik.
really good job.
Yeah, he knocked it out of the park. Where is he?
So, Dad, one of the questions we ask is, do you recommend this movie? Is there anybody you haven't recommended this to?
Well, I was just looking on my bookshelf over here. I have a Blu-ray version of Scrooge still in the wrapper, so I'm preserving it for my posterity of
Yes.
grandkids.
Okay, it's
So,
David Collins, real quick, that did Bob Cratchit. Now, Jordan, this is gonna blow your mind. So you know one of the two not debt collectors, the second gentleman for charity.
Yeah.
So he's the guy who's like, you miss that point, sir. It's at this time of year, people like to get.
Oh, he looks familiar. Who is he?
Okay, you want to know who he is? He is the father of Veruca Salt in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's him.
That's
Wow.
awesome.
That's him. Roy Kinnear. Yeah, Roy Kinnear or whatever his name is. So I don't care. I want it now.
Veruca, darling. And he jumps
Veruca,
down the
darling.
thing.
Oh, he is the father of a spoiled brat. So anyway,
That's
it's just funny
crazy.
to see him as a charitable collector in this one. But anyway, there's your tie-in. We brought in Willy Wonka. Someone had to bring up that connection, and I figured I'd do it here on the podcast. So, but anyway, this movie is great.
Well-
Would you guys recommend this movie?
Yes.
Absolutely. And I would typically say wait till the Christmas season to put this one on, but Dad might say otherwise. But the time you get to chopping your grass on your front lawn, that's about the first time you watch it in the year, and then as you're raking up the leaves is another time you'll watch it, and then during the Christmas season when there's snow out, like once a season, I think is about what we'd get. Dad, what is the most frequent time that you saw this movie? Like, what was like 2 days to a week, very next day, Dad? What was the most short time viewing this movie? I have to know. You watch it back to back one day or something?
No, I would never watch it back to back, but I've been known to maybe watch it, 2 weeks in a row, something like that.
I love
But
it.
I
Yes.
will.
Got worse
Yes.
after you guys left.
Yeah,
You
I'm
used to
not a
watch
freak watching it the
regularly.
next day. 2 weeks is plenty. Too much time has elapsed since I've seen Scrooge.
I will say this that this version of Scrooge is, and to be fair, I think it's an acquired taste, because if you've seen other versions of the Christmas Carol or Scrooge movies, this is something that you're not used to seeing this story told. Like I said, it's there's probably 10 songs in this movie, and they're not just like short ditties. They're 3 or 4 minute songs, and so it's an acquired taste. So sometimes when people watch it the first time, they're kind of like, wow, that was not what I expected.
Yeah. In fact, you heard one of those eloquently sung by me earlier in the podcast. So your listeners.
So I would just say it's a little bit like, not that I've drink wine, but it's a little bit like a fine wine. The more that it grows on you and ages, and you see it a few times, you grow to appreciate the variability. Just like at the very beginning scene of the show, when the contrast between those that have money and those that don't, and you see several scenes that go back and forth. Where here's what it's like for people that have money. Here's what it's like for people
even
that
the
don't.
vendors, right? They would sell to different people. So you had the wine.
Yes.
There was people that owned a wine shop, the people that came in with their gloves and their basket and their bonnets and everything, all the fancy frills and bells and whistles. And then just outside you had the street vendor who had like a little measly shop or table, and then the poorer class would buy from them. And so class, right? It's if you're rich, the haves and haves nots for sure. For sure. And you see that with Bob Cratchit, like his whole monologue where like he's talking about the spirit of Christmas and he makes it sound so exciting. And you see this undertone where he's showing the kids that it's a magical time to be alive. And that's what makes him such a great father to his kids. He's like, the spirit of Christmas is alive and well in him. And he's talking about how much money he has, and 15 shillings. I mean, like, we could barely feed his family with that. Who knows what that even is? How much was that back in the day? Like, he doubles it and he's blown away. Yeah, to feed a family of 6 or something. He had like 6 kids. It's crazy.
And the other thing that's remarkable about it is he's happy in his circumstance. He's not someone that is saying, "Oh, well, if I only had more, then life would be good and I would be happy." No, he's totally content with, I'm doing my best. We're surviving as a family, and I'm not going to dwell on what I don't have and the constant pursuit of wealth and everything.
He's got his wife to
That's
that.
the contrast between him and
she
Scrooge.
can remind him of how little he makes and how awful his boss is.
Yeah, good point.
Absolutely love it, folks. This has been cathartic talking about this movie. This has played such a big part in our lives, and it's funny to have it here now and just quoting it all the time. So I'm sure we'll think of more quotes in the next podcast or two. But would you guys recommend this movie? Yes, I think it's an emphatic yes.
10 times, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, Dad, we end every podcast by sharing movies that we've seen lately, movies that we're looking forward to seeing. Are you going to see any movies between now and the next time you watch Scrooge?
I might watch the new Maverick.
Oh my gosh, you have seen it, right? Yeah, we went and saw it in the theater. Amazing movie.
Yeah. Dad saw it like 3 times in the theater, didn't you?
I saw it 3 times in the theater, and I think once or twice on your iTunes account. So yeah, I've seen
but thankfully intermittently, with Scrooge in between each, so it wasn't too far away from your mind.
But yeah, it's there's when you find a good man, I'm not movie buffs like you guys, but I have a few that
what you mean you watch all movies Gerard Butler and all movies Bruce Willis and Scrooge like that. What do you mean you like movies? Those are the only 3 I can name possibly ever that you've ever seen and liked, but other movies too, I'm sure.
Yeah, I watched White Christmas last night with
that's
Mom
a
Red October.
Marley, so
okay, there you go.
I do like Humphrey Red October. That's right.
Oh, there you go. There's another one. Yeah,
that's a classic.
I know. Sean Connery, he's somehow he makes a pass. Yeah, he's no Bruce Willis.
Conclusions were all wrong.
Oh man, I need to see that movie again. It's been too long. It's the gosh dang cook. Yeah, I still remember that line, which is a spoiler, by the way. But anyway, it's like Professor Plum in the library. Folks, this has been Future.
Well, Cameron wants to share his stuff.
Oh, Cameron, you got 2 minutes.
I'll just share it next time.
Yeah.
No, okay. I got a lot.
We'll share it next week. But I haven't seen much of anything. I've been watching Christmas. I too watch White Christmas, and I watched Santa Claus today, and I watched Elf the other week. But I think I mentioned that on our Banshee of Inisherin movie review. So, have you seen anything, Jordan?
Just a lot of Community and Trailer Park Boys, but I'm really excited to hopefully watch some movies with Cameron this weekend. Oh yes.
Oh yeah, cheap. All right, folks, this has been Future Hidden Movie Gems. Leave us an email at futuromovies@gmail.com. Like our videos, share and post them, and you can check us out on YouTube. Our whole catalog's there, and check us out on
our
Spotify.
Website.
Check out our website. We have a website. I didn't know we had a website.
Check the group chat.
Group chat. I don't even know.
Cameron made a website. Yeah.
Cameron made a website of our podcast.
What is it? If you ever check the group chat, you'll have to just click the link because I don't have the domain reserved or whatever. So
it's not the website that you made for yourself, right?
Okay, I have a domain, Cameron. You can take it from mine. But anyways,
all right, folks. This has been a joy and a treat. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to all of you. And to all a good night. God bless us, everyone.